Have you ever felt like you're just spinning your wheels? You're putting in all this effort, but you're just not seeing the results you want? Well, today, we are diving deep into Atomic Habits by James Clear, and we're going to uncover the absolutely mind-blowing power of making tiny, everyday changes. This is all about getting just 1% better every single day.
So, how do we actually pull this off? Well, here's our game plan. First, we're going to bust the whole myth of overnight success. Then, we'll get into the incredible math behind getting just 1% better. After that, things get really practical. We'll talk about designing your environment, making those bad habits harder to do, and finally, the big one, how our habits literally shape our identity.
All right, first up, the myth of overnight success. We've all been there, right? You're working hard, you're trying to eat right, you're studying for that exam, but the scale doesn't move and your grades don't budge. It's so easy to feel like all those small efforts are completely useless. So what is really going on?
This quote from Jacob Riis just hits the nail on the head. It gives us the perfect way to think about this. It's not that final, dramatic blow that splits the rock. No way. It's the accumulation. All those seemingly insignificant taps that came before it. Every single one of them mattered. James Clear has a name for this. He calls it the plateau of latent potential. Think of it like an earthquake. For years, these massive tectonic plates are grinding against each other, building up incredible tension. On the surface, it looks like nothing is happening. And then, bam, an earthquake erupts. Your progress is just like that. It's happening beneath the surface, building up all this energy for that big breakthrough. So trust me, your efforts are never wasted.
So if these big, dramatic actions aren't the answer, then what is? Well, that brings us right to our second section, the power of 1% better. And believe me, the math behind these tiny gains is really surprising. The entire philosophy really hinges on this one tiny number, just 1%. I mean, it seems totally insignificant, right? But the effects of these small improvements, they compound over time. Getting just 1% better every single day for a year makes you nearly 38 times better by the end of it. It's like compounding interest, but for self-improvement. It's amazing.
And if you want to see this concept in action, look no further than this. For almost a century, British cycling was, well, let's be honest, they were mediocre at best. Then, in 2003, they hired a guy named Dave Brailsford. He introduced a really simple strategy, the aggregation of marginal gains. They just aimed to improve everything by 1%. And the results? They were absolutely astonishing. Within 5 years, they were dominating the Beijing Olympics, and then they went on to win 5 Tour de France titles in just 6 years. Wild.
Now here's what's so interesting. What were these 1% improvements? We're not talking about some revolutionary new bike technology. No, they were testing different massage gels, they hired a surgeon just to teach proper hand washing to avoid illness, they even painted the inside of their team truck white so they could spot tiny specks of dust that might affect the finely tuned bikes. They searched for a 1% advantage in every single overlooked detail.
So how do we actually apply this stuff in our own lives? Well, it's less about having superhuman willpower and more about being a smart architect. Let's get into our third section. Design your environment. The whole goal here is to make good habits the absolute path of least resistance.
Clear gives us a really simple but powerful framework for this. The first 2 laws of behavior change are just make it obvious and make it easy. You've got to think of your environment as this invisible hand that's constantly shaping your choices. So the goal is to become the architect of that environment.
Just look at this fantastic case study from a hospital cafeteria. Originally, soda was the obvious, easy choice, right there in refrigerators next to the cash registers. So what did they do? They simply added bottled water to every single drink location. They made it more obvious and just as easy to grab. The result? Soda sales dropped over 11%, and water sales jumped by almost 26%. And get this, nobody said a single word. The environment did all the work for them.
You know, this all comes down to a really simple idea. Action beats perfection every time. There's this university photography class where students were split into 2 groups. The quantity group, they were graded on the sheer volume of photos they took. The quality group just had to produce one single perfect photo. And the result? Well, the quantity group, the ones who were constantly shooting, experimenting, and making the habit of practice easy and frequent, they ended up producing all the best work.
So how can you apply this right now? It can be unbelievably simple. Clear talks about how he used to buy apples and stick them in the crisper drawer in his fridge, where, of course, he'd forget about them.
When he just put them in a big bowl right on the counter, making them obvious, he magically started eating them every single day. It's that easy.
Now, what's so fascinating is that this same exact principle works in reverse. So, welcome to Section 4, Making Bad Habits Hard. This is all about the power of intentionally adding friction into your life.
Here's a brilliant historical example. So it's 1830, and the famous writer Victor Hugo is facing this crushing, impossible deadline for his new book, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The problem? He was a world-class procrastinator.
So what was his solution? Well, it was a little extreme, but man, was it effective. He told his assistant to lock away all of his clothes, leaving him with nothing to wear but a big shawl. By making it physically impossible to go outside, he made his bad habit, procrastinating, incredibly difficult. And guess what? He finished the book with 2 weeks to spare.
What Victor Hugo created there has a name. It's called a commitment device. It's basically a choice you make right now that locks your future self into better behavior. It just works by adding so much friction to your bad habits that the good choice actually becomes the easier one.
Okay, and now for the final and honestly the most profound idea in this entire framework. Section 5. Habits shape your identity. See, the ultimate goal here isn't just to achieve some result. It's to actually become a new version of yourself.
This is such a critical mental shift. You have to stop focusing on the outcome and start focusing on the identity. The goal isn't just to read one book, it's to become a reader. The goal isn't to just run one marathon, it's to become a runner. Every small action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
Take this story of a man who stopped biting his nails. After forcing himself to stop, he got his first ever manicure. And he said that for the first time, his nails actually looked nice, and he became proud of them. He stopped biting them not out of sheer willpower, but because he adopted a new identity. He became someone who takes pride in caring for their nails.
Ultimately, this is the most powerful form of motivation that exists. True, lasting change happens when a habit stops being something you do and becomes part of who you are. You're no longer trying to convince yourself to do something. You're simply acting in alignment with the person you see yourself as.
And that leads us to a final question for you. Let's just forget about massive, life-altering goals for a second. What is one tiny, atomic habit you could start today that would cast a vote for the person you want to become? Just one small thing,